This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Joseph Barrett, our honored patron and Switch Knight.
Hi everybody, I'm KC.
And I'm JV.
And this is Switch Topics, and for those who are unfamiliar, these are special topical, more timeless episodes we like to record with special guests to discuss not only their projects and some great games, but a little bit more in-depth about the topics that affect gaming, and especially Switch gaming in general. And with us today, our special guest filling that role, we have Jay Bayless and Lou... All right, correct me when I mispronounce this, but if I have to take this to Lou Nascimento?
Nascimento, yeah, that's right.
All right, great.
I'm impressed, Casey.
I'm usually the one who botches those. JV's always the one who comes in and saves the day with the name pronunciation. And you were both with Chucklefish Games, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me what you guys do there, and just a little bit about yourselves and what you've done in the past?
Yeah, we're both artists at Chucklefish. Jay also does game design a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I work with games for 4 years now, and I started previously with animation, and I freelanced for a really long time, and now I'm at Chucklefish for a year.
And Jay?
Yeah, so I've been kind of working with Chucklefish for about 5 years now. Primarily kind of do art and animation, design. I mean, some of the projects I work on are quite big, so a lot of us get to do a lot of different things. But yeah, primarily art, I believe.
I mean, now you're both artists, but most of the time when I speak to the indie devs that I've met, they kind of say like, I don't really have a title. We all have to kind of do everything a little bit. So is that true in your case, or do you actually get to mostly be an artist, or do you have to do a little bit of everything?
I think we all do a little bit of like everything. I mean, so our previous title we worked on in-house was Starbound. I don't know if you guys have played it, though it's kind of like a massive game in terms of the amount of stuff in there. So there's a lot to do. So between like a small team, it means that basically everyone has a hand in nearly everything. So everyone ends up writing a little bit here, drawing something here or there, planning and designing some stuff. So yeah, we've kind of historically done a bunch of different stuff on that front.
How big is your team in general?
So Chucklefish, we have about 17 people, I believe.
Yeah, 17.
Okay.
Yep, and our office is here in London. We publish games as well, and then develop our own in-house. And Wargroove is our kind of second official kind of big release that we're working
Big
on.
project that's under your name?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Although I guess it's probably a smaller scale project than Starbound.
Mm-hmm. I just perused that art book I saw on your Twitter feed for Starbound, and I just saw like I could get an impression of yeah, this is pretty big. He has like the pages for all the different races and all the places you go. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. But Wargroove is your first Switch title, yes?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And but you also have some others that you were publishing. Just to drop a few of those names, I believe you're publishing also Pocket Rumble and Stardew Valley.
That's correct, yeah.
And so yeah, we will probably be seeing your name coming up a few more times in that. Let me ask though. I mean, now that this is your first foray into the Nintendo Switch, what can you say? Like, what really made the Nintendo Switch attractive to start publishing games on?
I think the style of games that we both publish and like to make, they fit the Nintendo public a lot.
Yeah, like, I think the kind of art direction, I mean, both Starbound and Wargroove are kind of focused on being kind of very visually appealing and cute, and not trying to be very kind of hardcore in a typical sense, I guess. And I think people who play Nintendo games kind of latch onto that. It's got an audience, but it's like an alternative mainstream audience rather than like a typical mainstream audience, I guess.
I like that term, alternative mainstream. Yeah.
Because you can't call it alternative if they're selling just as well or better, right?
Right. It's in parallel with each other as opposed to in opposite directions. That makes total sense.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Now, what has that process really been like when it comes to deciding that a game is going to be primarily focused on the Switch? Is there any specific considerations you have to take for the platform?
I think besides the controls and maybe adapting some of the features to what the console can give to us.
Yeah.
Like the touchscreen and tabletop mode.
Yeah, we have some interesting things with you kind of switching between essentially like a big screen display to a smaller screen display.
Right.
And the interesting thing with pixel art is that it's not like you can't just scale it like it's 3D polygons. You kind of have to have it like a proper resolution so that it displays correctly. So there's some interesting challenges in terms of making something that looks good on a big screen that can instantly transition to this tiny handheld, especially when you get to things like text. When text is rendering at tiny, got to be able to read it. So there's some interesting challenges there.
So that's actually an interesting point you brought up. Does that mean you guys have to essentially create a new sprite or pixel art asset for each resolution that the Switch can support?
No,
not at all. What we have been doing so far is changing how much we zoom in.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with pixel art, it's essentially you're creating something that's like a one-to-one. It's one pixel is one pixel in your art asset. And you have to kind of round it up at like a solid number so that it displays correctly without kind of scaling it and blurring it. So it's got
like it always has to be 4 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It's a decision between 4 times or 3 times scale, and you can't really go in between like you're playing something like Zelda, and it can just minimize everything, really.
Otherwise, it won't look pretty.
Yeah.
JV, can you guess how I'm familiar with scaling pixel art?
Don't you have a friend that is into pixel development and art as well?
Well, that's another thing. But for me, I do a lot of the pixel art reskins of card games.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
I take my favorite card games and I like try to slap on pixel art that I like, and I usually find like the little sprites on like a Spriter's resource.
Yeah.
And then I tried blowing them up, and I kept blowing up. I was like, they always look warped until like like a week later I found as long as I do it 400% or 800%, it comes out more. It looks right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're really we're big fans of pixel art here at the SwitchCast. It's been a part of our life for quite a while now.
Yeah.
So yes, we're really excited to have people who work as professionals with pixel art on the show.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Speaking of which, what kind of games do you guys play outside of anything that you work on?
I play a lot of indie story-focused games and strategy games. They're not that indie, I guess.
Historically, I was never into PC gaming until maybe like the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Historically, I was very kind of diehard Nintendo. I had like a SNES kind of going up until present day Switch. So yeah, I think my tastes in games have been influenced heavily by that. Although in recent years, I'm quite into kind of story-focused games and kind of things explore narrative just as much.
Yeah. But Nintendo definitely shaped what I like in games.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's good to know it's a little bit of a passion project to get to actually work on some Switch games. I mean, I'm sure that'd be for any of us. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about your game.
Okay.
And why don't you give us a little idea of what is Wargroove for any of our listeners who might not have seen any of your trailers or heard us talk about it at length already on the show.
Yeah.
So Wargroove is kind of like a tactical pixel art strategy game. It's kind of in the vein of games like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem. It's about every map you start from scratch and you build resources, and it's almost chess-like in how you plan your strategy. It's not about kind of getting the most clicks per turn or kind of leveling up across a long campaign. It's entirely about where you place your units and what move to make and how many moves ahead you can kind of look. And it's kind of appealing and friendly and trying to be something quite simple, so there's not too much overhead in terms of remembering what does what against what and what's speaking against what.
We want it to be very easy to pick up, right?
Yeah. We want something that you can pick up and just kind of play through a mission and see how you do and kind of advance in a little, push the story a little bit forward, and you can just put it down and not be missing too much when you pick it up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good design direction to go with. Though I have to ask, where did the name Wargroove come from?
This is a good question. We kind of... I think
someone just said
Finn, our director,
yeah.
suggested it as a working title, and then
we tried our hardest to find a new one, and nothing fit as well in the game, I think.
I was going to ask, like, is there a musical element to the game? Is like, Wargroove, you got some...
It's not musical themed as such. I think the main thing is it's very memorable.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Even if part of that is because he doesn't quite make sense, I think. It throws you off.
I gotta assume that if you're playing the game and you're just continuing to play, you get into the groove of playing a strategy game. So there you go.
Yeah, we'll try and throw the word groove in some
Yeah, and it's a very light-hearted name as well, so I think it fits.
I think it's kind of difficult to make a game about war, or at least a game's name about war that doesn't sound very serious.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to convey that this is
either
quite
epic or very mobile-like. So.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to convey something that's more in tone with like a Saturday morning cartoon than it is with Rome Total War, I guess.
That may not have been an intentional choice, but Groove does have that feel to it. So, good job, you guys.
That's his work, then, I guess.
Yeah, it worked out.
Now, you mentioned that is in the vein of games like Fire Emblem and what we've all been saying has been missing forever. JV and I, every year when we make our predictions, we're like, is there going to be a new Advance Wars type game? And this is one of those games that we really are hoping to see will fit that bill and fill that kind of hole in our libraries for a while. But what makes your game stand out? I know that you obviously aren't just, doing just a simple no frills kind of strategy game. Mm-hmm. There's some things that make yours unique. And I was looking at some of the features when I was watching the gameplay, and maybe you could tell me, how do what do they call them? The heroes or the
commanders, we call them, yeah.
And I saw one of your interviews, you called them both your king and your queen on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So I guess it's similar to like kind of games like Fire Emblem and Advance Wars in terms of input. So you've got this grid, and you can see what spaces you can move to. And it has got that Advance Wars element of every map is kind of starting from scratch and building resources. But then in terms of the actual balance and kind of theming and how you strategize and the kind of moves you'll make, it's actually kind of unique in its own way. So in terms of the commander units, you kind of start off with this, like, it's kind of modern day, it's like a hero unit almost, like you're playing League of Legends or something. You have this kind of defined character who kind of stands out because they've got this unique sprite, and then like when they're in battle, they're just a single unit alone rather than being like representing a whole battalion of soldiers. And then they kind of have their own kind of stats and their own abilities.
Yeah, and they can be pretty defining for the game in case you die or you win with them, right?
Yeah. You have like win conditions like where you take the HQ and you win and you like storm your opponent's front. But then often you can kind of force your final confrontation by pushing forward your other commander. You have this unit that's so powerful you can afford to be really risky and push forward, but then if you're too risky, you'll end up weakening yourself. So there's kind of mind games involved in like, how risky does my opponent think I can afford to be? And if I make a display with this, if I kind of throw my commander in there, maybe it's like a show of force. Maybe it's them showing off, oh, I'm actually feeling pretty confident about this match and maybe I should reconsider. And also, it causes matches end quite quickly, I think. So it doesn't drag out.
Yeah, because of the commander being so essential to the game, it doesn't drag itself too long.
Yeah, you don't hit this point where your opponent has like the advantage on resources in the map, and you're kind of just like dragging it out long term. Yeah, you're just kind of trickling away and losing everything. You can just make your final push and just throw in, and sometimes you can win. I mean, if you make the right moves, like a whole game can come down to like a single unit being in the wrong place at the right time, or being placed in a particular tile versus another tile.
So you're saying that the heroes are the primary win condition for the game. Is that right?
I think they often catalyze the matches, and it might not be the win condition that you go for, but then whatever win condition you do go for will be catalyzed by how you use this commander unit of yours. Yeah,
it's like you're fighting for the headquarters, but then when it's like, all right, I know I'm probably losing this. So rather than wait till he whittles me down, I'm going to make a little spearhead, a last-ditch throw at his boss, and either I'm going to die and just end this over quickly, or I might pull out a victory from nowhere.
Yeah, maybe your opponent hasn't like considered that you'd make a move like that, and suddenly they're thrown off guard, and you actually get the upper hand in a match where you're not doing so well in because you made some clever tactical choices, I guess. Yeah,
that actually sounds really exciting. I like the fact that you're going for the headquarters as expected, but if as a defense, you notice that they overextend with their commander, that's something you can take advantage of to press back and counterattack.
Yeah, and what's interesting as well is that because the tactics seem so focused on like almost predicting your move or predicting what your opponents will think to your certain move with your commander, matches actually end up being quite different on the same match. I mean, you play on the same map with 3 different groups of people playing, and then like how the same map plays out ends very differently because people use these units so differently.
Speaking of the units, I noticed that it looks like it has, not only are there the 12 commanders, there's the 4 factions they belong to. Are the factions themselves differentiated, or is it an aesthetic purely, or are there any functional differences between them?
The biggest differences is on the commanders themselves. They're
Okay.
very unique. Whether the factions, we thought that it would be good if the player is capable of switching factions and knowing how to play with those. We're looking at their adversary and actually be able to strategize and not be caught by surprise all the time by new stuff they had no idea about.
So the focus is on mastering the commanders. You don't have to relearn the basic troops per faction.
But then commanders might have abilities that actually change how you would use the same kind of units, which is interesting.
Right.
Okay. I noticed that the aesthetic differences are very noticeable. Like one team has the skeletons, or the and even the castles and their defenses change the look. I like just getting that different flavor, other than I just have blue troops and you have red troops.
Yeah, I think it's very nice.
Yeah, that's something that I missed a bit from Advance Wars because it was kind of just different colors and that was about it.
I noticed the turn sequence had a season, like it said summer 1 through 15. Does the seasons actually change over a battle?
That's something we're working on right now.
We have been discussing it.
Yeah,
That's
so we
something
have
that
a
we want
plan.
to do.
We have a plan for it. It's not set in stone at this
Yeah.
point in time, or less to the extent that I feel confident talking about it. Because,
Okay.
but yeah, we want to have some sort of having some sort of weather
And
involved.
some biomes as well.
Yeah, different kind of skins for the whole tile set, I guess.
So that makes sense. So it's not necessarily a mechanic that affects gameplay. It's just how everything is appearing so far.
The weather might,
The weather might do, yes.
Right, the weather.
and the biome is gonna, for now, from what was talked, it's going to influence a little bit how the seasons work.
But nothing is set in stone, of course, as
Yeah.
as it is for any
Especially,
indie
I
game.
think, especially for something like a strategy game, we could come up with an elaborate plan and it just doesn't work very well in balance,
Right,
which is very
exactly.
So I expect a lot of things will be developing right up to release and changing
Yeah.
things. I think that's the nature of this kind of game, especially a game that's so heavily focused on kind of competitive back and forth.
Yeah, I don't want you to set something in stone and end up making the gameplay not as pleasant.
But I mean, things like the visuals, obviously, were
Yeah.
everything. Like the characters, they will stay the same.
Yeah.
I saw that it has the custom map feature, which is always a welcome addition, especially considering there's the multiplayer online and local, which is huge for us. But what really I was interested, I saw in the map customization in one of your presentations, there are those scripted encounters. Maybe you could explain how those work.
So, I think it's best compared to a tool in StarCraft had a map editor like this,
Right.
Yeah.
where you assign a portion of the map and you can attach a dialogue scene, and then our example when we presented it at the PC Gaming Show was you attach a scene where if you enter this forest, you tag this scene, and maybe wolves or bandits will jump out, and then maybe a cutscene can play, and it will add some units to the map. So it's kind of like this kind of evolving kind of like a little story segment in the map
Yeah.
almost.
Which ties pretty well with the campaign editor that we have.
Yeah, so our example was then, say for example, bandits jump out and attack you in the woods, you might want to chase them down, and if you're making this custom campaign, it will actually change which map comes next.
Oh, you can do a custom campaign as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's the entire,
Right.
you can make entire campaigns, and
Wow.
have variable conditions and branching endings and branching cutscenes depending on what you're...
Yeah, and all of them with your custom maps as well.
Yeah, with custom maps for each of these missions as well.
I did see your PC gaming release about that, but I did forget if you guys mentioned being able to share those custom campaigns. Is that something you'd be able to share with people online, or is there any shareable feature for that?
Yeah, we're looking to make it so you can share them
Yeah.
Okay.
and kind of upload them online, and you can download other people's.
Yeah, on PC it's a bit more confirmed because we could make use of Sim, but for Switch we are looking into it.
Yeah, there are certain features that will be accessible on PC, like modding, that you can't really confirm.
With the Nintendo Switch, yeah.
Yeah, that's the nature of things, right? Yeah, but the custom campaign kind of feature is, I think, something that I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. It's essentially you kind of share and create this content. People can create their own stories, and I really like when people kind of get really into these kind of systems and kind of use them to tell their own little tales that they can share with their friends.
Yeah.
Right, especially with the scripted encounter system that you included, having that combined with a full-fledged custom campaign you can make and share is a unique feature that's you don't really see often in other strategy games like this.
I think the last time we've seen anything remotely like that, you remember Battle of Westnoth?
Yes.
Yeah, we know this, yeah.
That is the last time I've ever, and that's like, decades ago, and I was addicted to that forever. I mean, to have something that lets that go on and the way players, I'm sure there'll be like at first a glut, and then like people will start filtering out, no, this is the one you have to play. This person wrote quite an epic campaign here.
I think the really fun thing you get with things like Wesnorth, and it reminds me almost a bit of like RPG Maker, where you have these default characters, and then because people jump in and create their own stories, everyone interprets the characters you've made in very different ways. So one of the unheroic commanders could be the hero of someone's campaign just because someone likes that commander. And they just tell this ridiculous story with it, and it's just going to be really fun to see what happens with those.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what my friends can create with it.
And what's exciting is that this type of feature really has inherent community building qualities to it.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
something
absolutely.
that you can share with people, and even if we create our own custom campaign for people, Casey, that's something we can share to all of our listeners, and they'll be able to play it and get interested.
I think we have to tell people to go to our creation station in the Discord chat and start planning these stories out right now. Because honestly, I'm already set. I have in my mind. I want to tell a story through this right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is my canvas.
When I was a kid, the games that would excite me the most were the ones that had these kind of like a character creator or like the map makers, and you could just go spend hours doing these things and showing your friends.
Yeah, I used to try to edit Pokemon ROMs just so I could create my own stories with the characters that we already knew.
I have a
That's
very
so cool.
low quality Pokemon ROM hack somewhere from maybe 2008.
That's awesome. I know I've actually did some relatively similar stuff for the Advance Wars series. Casey and I are one of the biggest fans of Advance Wars, and every single time a game came out saying that they're the spiritual successor to Advance Wars, we've always been just, skeptical, excited but skeptical, and then ended up being a little bit disappointed.
The Advance Wars community has stuck around for a long time. It's
A very long time.
They have this very small but very, very dedicated group of people that have been around, and it's the same people who have been on these forums for the last 15 years.
Exactly.
And they're really into it, yeah.
It's very good for you guys, because once we saw your initial reveal video, we were like, I think this might just be the one we're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, is being compared to Advance Wars something that's endearing to you guys, or do you find it a little bit more frustrating when someone refers to your game as the spiritual successor to something?
I don't think we have any problems with that. Advance Wars was a great game, and everyone has been waiting for it for such a long time.
Right.
Even though we're being compared to it, I think we are going a step further in improving and creating our own features that are going to make it even more interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the way I see it is it's people getting excited when they see it and reminds them of Advance Wars, reminds them of something that they like. I don't think Wargroove will be the replacement of Advance Wars. It's just going to have a game that's kind of leapfrogs off that. Hey, I remember this was great, but then this is its own thing, and this really kind of inspires its own kind of community and its own kind of feel. And I think it helps that visually it's quite different as well.
Right.
I think if we had gone for something much more military, I think that would have been a bit more derivative. But I think because Wargroove has its own kind of look and doesn't really look like anything else, then I think that helps
it has its own team as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say, was that part of a conscious decision to choose not only, let's say, the pixel art style, but maybe the theming? I mean, I'm sure when you were thinking about this game, you had an option, like, could this be sci-fi, modern war, medieval? What kind of guided the decision to make medieval pixel art that you ended up going with?
In terms of pixel art, we have a really good team of pixel artists in-house, and I think it's good that we use what we have, which is really good. And also, when we were making mockups for this game, we made several different teams, like Dogs vs. Cats and modern modern age war, and then this kind of quirky thing that mixed a bunch of fantasy themes at the same time, and we decided to go with it.
Yeah, I think people have found your mock-ups that you posted online a while back that was like a much more traditional kind of modern military. I think it helps also that I assume in-house we also prefer fantasy theme.
Yeah. I think it gives so much more freedom to create.
Yeah, I think a big part of this actually is, and I think this ties into what Advance Wars did with its theme, is as you become more advanced and the technology gets better, it becomes stranger and less appropriate to make a colourful, cute game about modern warfare. Which is why I think they ended up they took Advance Wars in quite a dark direction with Days of Ruin.
Days of Ruin, yeah.
And I don't think people like that decision, but it's a very logical decision to make.
And it didn't quite have as wide an appeal to players as it did.
Interestingly, I hear that balance-wise, people find it to be really solid, and the only reason that people just don't like it that much is because it doesn't have all the old kind of factions, characters.
Yeah, it didn't have quite as much charm and upbeat attitudes to it.
I think part of the spirit of the game was that really cutesy, charming, and lighthearted feeling that it had, and kind of lost it over time.
The almost inappropriate, cute usage of warfare.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, so I guess it makes sense. You guys already had a very solid pixel art team. That was the primary driving force for choosing to go with 2D over a 3D strategy game. Then
I don't think we really would have considered. I don't think
we, especially for the game that we wanted to make, I don't think we would consider 3D even if the team knew 3D, because that's part of the spirit that we wanted to bring.
Yeah. I don't think it adds to the gameplay much, and it throws a bunch of when you do 2D, you can cheat with things, and things can be at wacky scales or have odd perspectives, and you can, especially with tile-based games, 2D works quite well. When you make things 3D, there has to be some sort of Euclidean logic to how the geometry works.
Yeah, things no longer can be icons. They need to be realistic proportions, and then you lose a little bit of the charm right there.
A lot of strategy games will have this consistent proportions when they're zooming out versus zooming in, because they might zoom in just to show you the battle, and that doesn't really jive well with kind of something like Wargroove, where you kind of cut to a different scene and you're seeing this kind of comic book style battle happen in a different perspective.
I mean, it kind of even reminds me of just breaking it down to the most simplest example is when I play a chess game on the computer. They usually have those really nice 3D models of the pieces, and then I use it for 10 minutes and I switch to the 2D top-down mode and just look at it, because it's just harder to process sometimes exact positioning that is required for such a strategic game.
Yeah, you're not benefiting yourself by playing it with these high-res graphics.
Some game genres end up being much harder to be balanced if they go 3 dimensions instead of 2.
Yeah.
And I think it's the case with a game like Wargroove.
Maybe we could use that as a jumping off point to talk. We've been touching upon the balance issues for a while, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it was like balancing a game like this. Is the balance different when you're designing the campaign, where you can kind of control more or less what the enemy has, but then you have to take into account the multiplayer aspect of the game. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you tried to balance, I guess the main difference being the commander powers, and I guess the biggest thing is always who goes first. I'm always worried about who goes first being a big advantage.
This is a lot of this stuff is obviously in development, so
we've been discussing it a lot.
Yeah, it's been just a discussion, especially the first term advantage, as people call it. We have some solutions to that, and I don't know what one we'll end up going with. I think there's a few different approaches you can take with it, and it is a very tricky one. And I think once you get into the community, you see the longer people play it, the more they feel the stronger they feel over time. I remember as a kid, it not really feeling like it was a factor, and now it's in retrospect, it's a big part of the balance and things. In terms of campaigns versus multiplayer, that is another good point. I guess the approach is we want to have some a full set, a set of units, and kind of balance those for multiplayer, and then take that balance and kind of apply that to the single player, and use those tools in a sort of complete state to kind of develop the campaign missions. And the campaign missions you can kind of adjust on the fly, so it's not too bothersome to kind of go back and change things.
You can kind of play test by yourself how it's going, and then you can adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
That does make sense. You make sure to focus most of your balance on multiplayer where it needs to be as equal as possible.
Yeah.
And in a campaign, there doesn't necessarily have to be that symmetry, so...
It's almost like, to an extent, the campaign is like a training mode for playing online and learning the units individually and teaching you, like, what is good against what and what kind of strategies to use. Then it also means, because you're not playing with balance in mind in the campaign, you can be the odds can be stacked against you to make it harder and so on. You can play with some interesting kind of unique features and unique scenarios that you wouldn't get in multiplayer.
I guess that's where those like kind of the puzzly elements for a lot of stages come in. It's like you want to teach them, all right, like
if you're in this situation.
Yeah, if you're in this situation where it looks hopeless, there is one thing you can do to beat this situation, and sea power or something like that. And that's always, one of those things people see, at least in the hard modes. Like, I know, like, when I play a lot of strategy games, the first time through the campaigns, if it's easy, I feel like I'm just doing whatever and kind of learning. But then there's that second time through, or like the hard mode, where it's like, oh boy, I gotta solve this tactical puzzle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I guess also I can imagine people making their own kind of tutorials to, if someone wants a crash course in a particular unit and they feel like it hasn't been represented, I'm sure someone will make their own campaign just for that, so that'll be fun.
Now, in the campaign, it looks like there's some story element to this game. This isn't just a game about generic people beating each other up. It seems like you've put a lot of work into the characters and the nations, I guess, they represent. So is there any glimpse of what the story or background of this world that you could share with us?
Right.
Very apprehensive.
Oh, you don't need to give us any story details. Just the general feel of the story. How
I think so. In our launch trailer, we mentioned that it will be different campaigns for each commanders.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're approaching it. So when you play something like Advance Wars or Fire Emblem, you get this big 40 mission long campaign, and you play through this huge, big kind of sprawling epic. And I think, at least from our experiences, we felt like a lot of people don't finish those very often.
Yeah.
Right.
So
We definitely want to go very light on the story, want to make it be not very massive on text.
we approached it like similar to like you're playing Street Fighter and you play arcade mode and you get 5 matches and you beat the boss and then you get an ending. It's almost like you're approaching it in its like lightest form. So you have these smaller campaigns that kind of span a smaller story, and those stories are kind of excuses to explore these characters' personalities rather than tell your next Game of Thrones epic story that you've planned out.
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting take on it, because you're right. Some people, they might have a roadblock in the campaign mode where it's either too hard for them or they're just not interested anymore, and then they miss out on a big chunk of story that's considered pivotal. But in this case, it's a bit more bite-sized.
Yeah, I think if we were to attempt to try and tell like a very serious kind of sprawling fantasy epic, it just wouldn't be as good as using that time to explore the characters and make you like these characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's quite a different approach to other strategy games, but I think it's definitely in line with what we kind of the tone of Wargroove as well.
Oh, that seems right. And I think leave the epics to the fans who are going to obviously go all in on this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the level I'm excited.
They're going to force you to
well.
make one of these stories canon. Like they're going to force you to like, no, this one was so. Just make it canon that these two characters get married.
If we get people arguing about the canon, we've done our jobs.
Yeah.
It means people care about the characters, and that seems like the primary focus that you guys are looking for, which is nice.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice from a personal point of view to go on that journey from being the Nintendo gamers arguing about the story and canon of Nintendo games to being on the other side of that and seeing people argue about ours.
To have the characters that people argue about. That's perfect.
So I was going to ask if you had plans of like DLC in the future at all. Obviously, it's way too early to even mention that, but I kind of feel like that the custom modes that people are going to be writing is going to be effectively the DLC for this game that will be spawned forever.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say anything. Obviously, this is a genre that historically people have often developed that kind of content for, but right now we're just focusing on finishing the base game.
Well, how
making it
long
really
away
kind
are
of
we
solid.
from it being, or just an estimate of how long do you expect to have it ready to go about in?
Yeah, it's really hard to put a timeline on game development, so so far it seems like it's a 2017 release, but
I would like that. I think we're not in the kind of deadline where something will come out and invalidate the whole project. I think we'd rather make something that's really solid and is really good.
Yeah.
And kind of we're proud of, than kind of release it for a particular holiday or so on and so forth.
And maybe you could just share with us, was there any particularly challenging aspect in the development that maybe you'd want to vent about, or just tell us about what happened during any like real walls that you had to overcome during the development?
I think the balancing so far has been discussed so much.
Yeah, I think so. One thing that's quite tricky is you look at something like a modern war game, you look at Advance Wars, and there is logic to what can hit what. Okay, you have anti-air units, and they are vehicles designed to shoot down planes in real life, so logically they're good against shooting down planes, and so on and so forth. And there's kind of like a military logic to it, and it's trickier trying to pick the right units that have like a consistent logic internally.
Yeah, especially when it's like fantasy. We have harpies and dragons and
like what
mermen, merfolk.
Like, you have to kind of come up with the equivalents and find out what works. So you have things like, okay, we've got a trebuchet, that makes sense, it's like a long-range unit. And then, like, what's an anti-sea unit in fantasy, right? You start getting into that, so you have to kind of get clever about, like, the logic we define in the game. And there's definitely been a lot of back and forth, like, throughout its development and kind of figuring those out. But I think we're in a good place right now. We've got an interesting set of units. We haven't showed every unit off that we've got.
Right.
Are the dragons the bombers in this game?
That's
the feeling I got. I just looked at them. I was like, no, those got to be the bombers. Those things.
I guess they're kind of like a heavy air unit that strikes ground, and it's kind of like as soon as someone's got one, it's like, oh dear, this is a big problem. I have to deal with this momentarily.
It just felt like it because I just see that like great animation. I love the way like when it breathes the fire across both screens, and I'm just like, that's like a scary, devastating, strafing. And like, that's the kind of fear I get when I see the bomber and he's surrounded by nothing but soft ground units. It's like, yep, it's time for him to feed.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely draw a few equivalents, but I think by the time of the final game, it will be less. I've seen some people online trying to like suss the logic and be like, okay, they're making an analog to Advance Wars. This is what this is, and it's like, actually, in reality, it's not actually that simple.
I gotcha. Okay, so you had a little more nuance to them than.
The final balance ends up being its own kind of game entirely.
Outstanding. All right, well, thank you very much for this. Let's switch gears now, and let's move into a little bit more of the broader topic and pick your brains about pixel art games. All right, so here we are. We're talking about the whole, I mean, like, I gotta say, I feel like especially, I mean, we've seen pixel art games from a lot of studios in the past, but I feel like it's really taken a hold in the indie development world. And I guess I just want to start off this conversation here by asking you, what do you think is the appeal of the pixel art games? A, from a developer side, and B, from the fan side. Why do we get drawn to it so much?
I think why do the players get drawn for it so much? In the beginning was that whole nostalgia thing, and then from the developer side, there's not only you being able to bring it back, but also develop a art style that was abandoned for a while and try to make completely new kinds of games out of it. I think when pixel art was sort of abandoned, when people were transitioning to 3D, it wasn't fully developed yet, and there was like the space open for people to try and bring it further. And also, it's quite an enduring style. You look at it and you're reminded like, oh, I used to play games like that had this square feeling to it when I was a kid.
It's almost like timeless in that respect.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of transitioned from a point where people see it as being like a retro thing and more becoming kind of like its own distinct style. I think when you play a pixel art game, there's a lot of implication on the kind of games that the developers themselves like and what they kind of want to, I kind of feel they want to recreate. When you look, I mean, like, it's like a world away from like kind of like photorealistic kind of military games
Yeah.
and so on.
It's kind of relief when you see so many 3D FPS games and you can like run away from it for a while and play games that feel completely different from it.
Do you feel that there's any particular advantage that a game gets? I mean, other than the like nostalgic appeal, like, is there something that a pixel art game can do that might not be quite as possible on something that has like photorealistic 3D models running around?
So a perspective I have, I mean, so we worked on the game Starbound, and that's a game with kind of so much content, and pixel art, especially if you define quite a simple style and you define palettes and you create this art pipeline where you can draw new things for your game really fast and get like a bunch of people who can kind of do it in the same style. It means that like game kind of content heavy games and sandbox games actually benefit from that. But also with Starbound as well, because it was kind of so heavily focused on mod content, because anyone can open like download paint.net and kind of start drawing sprites straight away. It's kind of easy to understand if you're developing kind of custom content on that front.
And there's also the side of some of those games, not all, because it depends how you program it, but some of those games are much more accessible. People with computers that can handle so much, or consoles that can handle so much, they can run those games.
Right. So you're open to a much wider audience because there isn't that technical limitation that 3D games might bring in.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that helps a lot with PC games, I think, because a lot of countries, especially outside the West, a lot of people don't actually have like up-to-date rigs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So if you can get a game that can run easily on Windows XP, then a lot of people will thank you more than you think.
Yeah, for a really long time I was only playing really old games because my computers back in Brazil couldn't handle anything
Right.
recent.
I just wanted to ask, you both mentioned you're artists on the game. Do you both work on the same part of the art, or are one of you like the character portraits or the backgrounds? I mean, do you have to match your styles to each other also as you're working on the same game?
We both work in the same things, not necessarily at the same time, but with the characters, with the background work, with animations and concept art, and we try to match the style of the game as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you guys have a general art team that all works on the same thing, as opposed to segmenting the team into different types of assets?
To an extent, I mean, like,
Yeah.
there'll be some things that you'll be doing primarily because you kind of define the look for those.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of artists in the office, it's just
Both of us.
it's just us.
plus
We are the art team.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, well,
and plus
there
our
you
on
go.
the
freelancer.
side. So there's a
So
few
which
of
one
us.
of you did all the avatars for your Twitter accounts?
None of us actually. It's,
Okay, that was a friend of
another-
ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, we mentioned earlier, there is a very distinct difference between pixel art and 3D art. When it comes to 3D art, there's a certain requirement of it to look as realistic or as acceptable as possible. Is that something that you guys consciously circumvent by switching into a pixel art style?
It depends a lot. It depends on the game. Some pixel art games, they still try to strive for a more realistic, darker kind of art style. I think when I think of pixel art, I think more as a medium to make art rather than a style itself.
Right.
So some games can still go as realistic as they possibly can on the time that they want to develop, even in pixel art. But in our case, we wanted to do something really, really, really lighthearted and easy to look at and cartoonized. Is that the word?
Like,
Cartoon?
yeah,
Cartoon, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so.
cartoonify.
Yeah, exactly, cartoonified. So in this case, we could run away a little bit from the proportions being.
Yeah. You kind of get like a free rein to do what you'd like to do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're doing kind of realistic 3D art or realistic 2D art, you're still kind of confined to doing something that looks real.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you can cheat and you can do things that are a bit more up your personal interest because you're not kind of confined, I guess.
Yeah, but they gotta make some sense, right?
Yeah.
Inside that space.
I gotta say, like, you bring up a good example in my head. I like horror games, but I do not like gore and like really scary. scary, like, just games that try to shock me. And one of the games I'm really interested in lately is this one, the Count Lucinor, which is a really bloody, creepy game, but it has all this pixel art, and I can actually like stomach a little more the things they're trying to do and convey to me. And it might even be more fearsome because it blurs, it leaves more to my imagination. Whereas I just stopped playing, and I've mentioned before, A Binding of Isaac, which is another game with lots of bloody, weird stuff. But I just couldn't take that game. I was like, oh no, this is just gross. I can't look at this. But pixelizing it, it's like, okay, I can understand what's happening, feel the fear and the ambiance, and not feel like the game's just trying to like throw blood in my face to, get me shocked.
I think it helps a lot, the fact that it's low resolution and it doesn't look like something you could look through your door and it's there.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you described, Lou, pixel art as like a medium.
Yeah.
And then one of the big rules of your medium is that you're not just drawing what the thing you are trying to draw is, you're kind of drawing to imply detail. Yeah. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of like a pixel is like, you know when you play old games and people like, oh, I saw this statue as this face, but you'll see it as this face. It's like you're implying there's a face there or there's detail there. And a lot of games will use that to kind of, the graphics were low res, so you kind of have to imply a lot of detail, and it kind of, your mind kind of fills in the blanks.
Right. That's actually one of the points that we brought up in the last episode. Casey himself mentioned that he gets more afraid from pixel-based games because there's just the pixel art style allows you to fill in what you're most afraid of, or fill in what scares you most. And with 3D games, it kind of pushes that imagination away.
Yeah, you're just, with 3D, I guess, you're just showing what there is. It's just directly there, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. You know what that thing is, whereas if it's like some weird pixely tentacles, it's like, I can't even imagine what Lovecraftian horror is in that closet there.
Yeah, or like a lot of Castlevania games, you have these creatures that are kind of, the scale means you can't really see anyone's faces, so you can just kind of imagine what they look like, and it kind of leaves you to fill in some of those blanks.
Right. Nothing scares you as much as what your mind knows scares you, so
yeah,
it fills in. Now, you did mention pixel art as a genre. Is there any specific pixel game that's maybe coming out on the Nintendo Switch that you guys are most interested in?
Or ones that you've played in the past that you guys are just really big fans of?
There's a game called Dimambo that some developers here in England have developed. It's kind of like a... Have you played Dimambo?
No, I never played it.
It's kind of like a zany Smash Bros, but you play as a ball, and you kind of destroy the environment you're in. It's kind of cool. That's nice.
Oh, awesome.
There's also Celeste, which is from the same creators of Towerfall. Mm-hmm. And it's like a really precise platforming game, and it's a bit spooky in the feeling, so I'm curious to see that. I managed to try it at GDC a little bit and left me wanting more.
That actually reminds me of like those kind of, that's the one where you're climbing the mountain, right? And there's all those weird like portals and stuff that you're for a genre like that. Actually, a pixel has that really unique advantage. I think that's why they made Meat Boy just a square, in that it's a perfect hitbox. If you just have a very simple, you don't have to have complicated, you don't have to worry about people saying, oh no, that didn't hit me, that spike was, further away than it looked. It's like, no, you are a perfect box, and it is very easy for the game to know whether or not you hit said spike.
Oh yeah. I think even like Towerfall had that as well, right? Where everything feels extremely solid and quite impactful because you can tell down to the pixel where things are going to hit you and if they're going to avoid you and so on and so forth.
Definitely.
I think that's one of the things why I'm interested in Pocket Rumble is that I like the idea of a pixel-based fighting game that can take advantage of that, like very exact, not super blurry hit areas and stuff like, you can very clearly see everything on the screen and where your punch stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps as well. Pocket Rumble is a game where it's kind of prioritizing the mind. I talked earlier about how in Wargroove these commanders kind of introduce this element of mind game, and I guess Pocket Rumble is a game that kind of strips away a lot of the complexity by you've only got like a certain set of moves and combos and things, but you're not kind of worried too much about kind of memorizing all these inputs. It's entirely about you can focus on what you're going to do and what they're going to do and what you think your opponent's going to do.
Right.
And kind of and I think the visual cleanliness kind of strips a lot of the complexity away as well. So it feels really sharp, and I think it plays really well. I think it helps it be accessible as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think
it's one of the fighting games that I can actually play and not be frustrated by.
That's
I
awesome.
think with characters that are kind of very complicated to look at, there's a lot, you're taking in a lot of information whilst also trying to plan your moves and so on, right?
So I guess you guys plan on this is the direction you're going to go in. You want to stay with pixel art graphics for the long run of your Chucklefish. You think that's their direction, pretty much?
That's so hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I could say that, like, for the next
We haven't.
3 years at least.
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
think we'll be in
keep
it
with-
for a short to mid-term, I guess.
Yeah, but we don't know about the long future ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. It could turn out that for some reason everyone starts deciding that they're terrible and no one buys them anymore.
Yeah.
It's definitely you guys are definitely a big development studio in the pixel game genre. I guess based on what you're saying, it's not necessarily a conscious decision for you guys to stay and only do pixel games. You guys would go with the flow of what the industry is asking for.
I guess part of it is we just like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it helps to work with things that you like, right? I mean,
Yes.
part of our reason for making Wargroove is because we wanted to play a game like Wargroove, so we decided to make one.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess even games like Pocket Rumble, that's the kind of game we want to play, and Stardew Valley we love that game as well as publishing that game and so on. So it helps to be enthusiastic
Definitely
in
helps.
what you work with, right?
Right.
Right, and I guess there's also just the inherent advantage of having that experience that you've had for so long with Starbound and all your other games.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, once you've done it once, you know the rules and you know what's going to work and what's going to cause problems later on.
Now, I do want to ask: is there? Do you guys have a specific design or consistency or design skeleton for pixel art throughout all of your past games? Is there a specific style that you guys are consciously trying to be consistent through Start?
I think we're creating a new style for every single new game.
Yeah, I guess it's more of like a wider aesthetic. We make games that are kind of appealing, and I don't imagine we're going to make a game that's like extremely gory and violent anytime soon. We make games that are kind of friendly and appealing and kind of charming, and kind of strong focus on kind of these appealing characters as well.
And in terms of aesthetic, I noticed that we really try to tailor it for the mood of the game that we're trying to make.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense that they change
Personally, I feel that one of the advantages you guys have with these games that you're doing now in the pixel art is, I think that it might, or at least I like to think that it adds longevity to the games, whereas even today's most beautiful games come 2 generations, people are a little more likely to be like, oh yeah, that's fine, but it's nowhere, up to today's standards. Whereas if you make a pixel art game, people who like it for what it is today are not going to be like, oh, pixel art is so much awesomer today. And it's like, no, it's just a timeless kind of style that can withstand the test of time, because if you like it today, you're probably going to like it next year.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
It's absolutely true. I mean, one of my favorite games is Cave Story. That came out early 2000s.
Yes.
Still looks fantastic as far as I'm
does.
concerned.
And and actually, honestly, I never turn on the modern graphics. Like when I played that game on they always have like the old school graphics and the updated. I've never used the updated graphics on those.
I've seen a lot of people saying, well, if they released a Nintendo 64 Mini, it would be terrible because all those games look muddy and horrible, whilst kind of SNES is aged better than the console that came after it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
I don't really want to play Mario Kart 64 again because I remember how it actually looks, and that's a horrible prospect.
Yeah, I'm a bit scared of playing playing Ocarina of Time.
Link's got a really square face. He's got a really pointy
it's very
chin.
triangular.
Yeah.
But I remember playing on the GSS, and it was good because the textures were all dated.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually an interesting situation because I've noticed that not very many big publishers and big developers or like AAA developers haven't really embraced the pixel art style as much as indie developers have.
I don't think you could sell a full-priced pixel art game, and
not only that, I think AAA studios they invest a lot on the fact that if you have new technology, it's gonna attract more people.
Right.
Like, the newer generation is gonna be more attracted to the latest technology and the latest 3D graphics and the most realistic. A lot of people, I hear a lot of people that I know back at home that say that they only bought X game because they really wanted to see how realistic it was.
Yeah, it's kind of always been the push, right? It's kind of like an arms race and getting to the higher poly count and better lighting and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And as indie developers, you guys can circumvent that race by using a timeless style like pixel art.
just not being in the race at all.
Yeah.
But I think it does carve out consumer expectation. I don't think, because people have this expectation of what a full price game is, I don't think you could develop and produce a full, like a $50 pixel art game, even if it was fantastic, because I think people feel like the money they pay needs to go towards these, like, the technology behind it.
Yeah, it's kind of a mental stigma they have about that.
I mean,
yeah,
that's fine though. I mean, it just means that we can develop. I think it does mean that it doesn't really mean that pixel art games are going to be smaller scale. Something like Stardew Valley, for example, I think people are putting longer hours into that than they are, I don't know,
Call of Duty,
Assassin's Creed, you know? I think you can have...
Yeah. Well, that's the example of the kind of what you were saying before, and that's the direction that I'm at least more leaning towards as a gamer, is that, okay, it's very simple, we have the assets, and we can create as much content, and they've just packed that game. The developer just packed that game with so much content that it's just overwhelming to think of. And if anyone ever actually thought of or took that shot, I mean, just make the most mind-blowingly vast game, even like an MMO level world, but it just used, simple graphics, but they can make a world that's just that deep. That's the kind of thing that I'm totally not the majority consumer. I'm very specific, but that would be my thing.
I think there was an era when you did get games like that. So as a specific example, we've been playing, have you been seeing us playing it? Suikoden 2? Which is a PlayStation 1 game. So that would have...
Suikoden! Did he just say Suikoden 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Wow, KC, you got another fan.
You're already my favorite guest I will ever have on the show.
So I've never really played this game until this week, and we've been playing through it, and it's fantastic. And it's got like 100 like party members, which
108 characters.
108 characters, and they're all just like individually animated. And that's an example of what a AAA pixel art game would be.
Mm-hmm.
It's the scale of it is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But a game like that wouldn't come out now.
Yeah. That's the game I was telling you earlier that I put pixel art onto card games. Suikoden 2 is what I'm doing a pixel art reskin of, and I'm trying to get every character from that game their own card on that card game. That is my passion.
You'll have to send me that. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it does.
And just to go all in, I have a tattoo from the game on my arm, so just to go all in on show you.
I have to say, I've been podcasting with KC for 6+ years now, and he loves Suikoden quite a bit. He's always championing the game for other people to try. And to hear you guys just saying that you've been hopping into the game just recently,
I'm crying.
Great.
There's a tear in my eye to know it's still tiny people.
The journey is ended.
But yeah, right, exactly. That's the kind of thing that they could only do. We probably won't see people do. Just make that massive supply of characters. Just give them all their own little unique mechanics, but they don't have to worry too much about the assets because it's pretty simple.
The closest thing you get now is something like Disgaea 5, which is obviously on Switch as well, and that is it pixel art? Is it high res? I think they might have jumped to high res. It's still 2D, but it just has an absurd amount of kind of depth to it. It's also extremely hard to figure out where you start on a game like that when you're playing it, but
there's a million ways to overpower your character in Disgaea.
I would definitely love to see kind of a studio.
Oh, it looks like it's 2D now. 2D isometric.
But it's high res art. I think the earliest ones were pixel art. They were quite high res pixel art. But
right.
But I would love to see something like with the scale of like Suikoden done like in the modern day. That'd be really exciting.
Yeah.
And I am noticing. I guess I totally forgot. Fire Emblem kind of does pixel art with whenever it's on the grid view, but then it transitions into
they jump
3D art style. But that's something it looks like they're really starting to stay away from, or straight away from, in future iterations.
I know a lot of people actually prefer like the I think around like the Game Boy Advance kind of Final Emblem 7. They had really nice animations actually that held up really well. You can jump into that game now and it looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely one of the games that the older games are definitely timeless as well. Since
definitely.
There's with strategy pixel games, there's no real gameplay mechanic that limits it compared to how stuff are now.
Yeah, often you get things like maybe the controls are awkward, or they fix something in a later rendition, but for the most part, they're still pretty good.
All right, well, I think we've really exhausted this topic pretty well, actually. We've gone in a lot of depth, and you've both had a lot of great stuff to share, and it's just a genre that I feel that, I guess an art genre that I feel is very strong with the Switch community, I feel in particular. I hope that this episode gets more people to give it a second chance if they haven't already, or if they've maybe overlooked it, like you said, because it's not, a AAA crazy graphics type of game you see.
And now the Switch, it shows pixel art beautifully. It's such a sharp screen.
Yeah.
It looks so great.
Yeah, and I'm amazed how many of these have been coming to it so far. I used to have to only find these games once in a while on maybe like the Vita store. I'd find some of these games, but now they've been coming quite in large numbers.
Right. And it's a great advantage to studios like Chucklefish because it allows you guys to focus primarily development on one platform, which is the Switch, but that platform itself gives you portability that you might not have been able to easily access otherwise.
Yeah, and I guess another aspect is just from a personal level is this: we just really like Nintendo.
Yeah,
company.
we really like it.
That's great.
Right, especially, you guys expressed that as a company, you guys liked more lighthearted, more open and accessible gameplay. So, Nintendo's been very, very much in that space ever since the NES days. So, it seems like your games are a natural fit for this platform.
It's hard to think of pixel graphics without thinking Nintendo, honestly.
Definitely.
All right, well, thank you, Lou Nascimento and Jay Bayless, for your time here. Is there anything else that you kind of want to mention about the game, or anything else that you want to drop a plug about?
I guess we have a development blog that we've been updating. So if you go to wargroove.com/blog, every now and then we've been posting updates and kind of showing the kind of behind the scenes of kind of how we're doing this, or what the animation in progress is for this unit, and so on and so forth. So shining a bit of light on it. I was a really big fan of back in like 2006-07 when Smash Bros. Brawl had this every day it would reveal one minor thing about the game.
Oh, yeah.
I think you guys remember that, I'm sure. That was the most
Absolutely.
addicted I've ever been to a game's development cycle to like an unhealthy extent. So it's quite nice to be able to replicate that kind of feeling in a smaller, less extreme manner.
Yeah.
Of course.
And also our Reddit.
Yeah, we've got a Reddit/r/Wargroove where we're kind of getting the first beginnings of a community together. So come join and we'll post GIFs and tweets
And
there and so on.
theories.
So,
That's awesome.
Discussions.
yeah, so just kind of come along and chat to us if you'd like.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's wargroove.com/blog and reddit.com/r/wargroove, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, listeners, we will have links to their blog and their Twitters if you want to follow each of these fine developers on your own there. And for our listeners here, if you like this show and you like what we do here and you want to help us keep going, please remember to visit us over at patreon.com/theswitchcast. That's where you can go and pledge your support, $1, $5, $10, whatever you feel like per month to keep the show going and help us do more awesome content like this. And, of course, we like reviews on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to, but the Apple one helps us the most. Discord, we have a Discord chat if you want to come and talk to us anytime. We have a great active community, and we're always looking to chat. And you can email us, KC, that's the letters KC, @theswitchcast.com, and JV @theswitchcast.com.
Yeah, and we also have a Twitter account. Follow us on @theswitchcast. It would be the same for the Instagram, and we have a really large Facebook group that you guys can check out for the SwitchCast and for Nintendo Switch enthusiasts in general. We have a SwitchCast friends list. If you want friends to play with, we'll add that in the show notes.
And you're going to probably want to add those friends to, I'm assuming that's how you're going to find opponents if you want to play people in Wargroove.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be very handy to find Wargroove opponents. So check out that friends list that we're going to add to the show notes. Either way, thank you guys for hopping on this podcast with us.
No worries, it's been great.
And until next time,
Switch it up.